Okay, so if you're even a little bit into the world of crypto, you've definitely heard the name Ripple. And man, the stories are all over the place. One day, it's going to completely change how money moves around the globe. The next, it's just another speculative coin. So what's the real story? Today, we're going to slice right through all that noise and really separate the hype from what's actually happening with one of crypto's most controversial companies. And really, it all seems to boil down to this one massive question that's on everyone's mind. Is Ripple about to go public with an IPO and just completely change the game for its token XRP? This is the rumor that just will not die, and it's right at the heart of what we're digging into today. All right, let's kick things off with the hype side of the story. The big rumor buzzing around is that a Ripple IPO is just over the horizon, maybe even as soon as 2026. And the people who believe this think this single event could be the rocket fuel that sends XRP into the stratosphere. And you can just feel the optimism in the air, right? A quote like this talks about a floodgate of institutional capital. The whole idea is that going public gives them this huge stamp of legitimacy, attracting all the big money investors who've been sitting on the sidelines. So here's the thinking, all broken down. A lot of folks are pointing to some big regulatory wins lately as a sign that the coast is clear for an IPO. If that happens, they believe XRP could morph from just a speculative coin into a must-have tool for finance, opening the floodgates to a whole new class of institutional money. But just when all that IPO talk is getting really loud, Ripple itself comes out and basically pours a bucket of ice water on the whole thing. And this right here is where the real conflict in the story starts to pop up. And yeah, this right here, this shows you the total disconnect. On one side, you have researchers saying they have documented indications of IPO talks. And on the other, you have Ripple's own president, Monica Long, saying flat out, no plan, no timeline. So what gives? Who are we supposed to believe here? And this quote from Monica Long really gets to the core of it. The company's official line is, hey, we're doing just fine. They're well-funded. I mean, they've been around for a while and sold a lot of XRP early on, and they just don't need to go public to raise cash for growth. And, staying private actually has some pretty big strategic perks for them. They don't have to worry about the crazy ups and downs of the stock market or pleasing Wall Street every 3 months. They can keep their massive XRP holdings out of the public spotlight and stay flexible. Plus, with the rules for crypto still kind of murky, jumping into a public offering could be a huge gamble. Okay, so if an IPO isn't the big play, then what is? Let's forget the speculation for a minute and look at what Ripple is actually building in the real world right now. I mean, check out these numbers. They speak for themselves. We're talking about more than 300 financial institutions scattered across 55 countries already using Ripple's tech. And look, this isn't some maybe one day thing. This is happening as we speak. And the sheer scale of what they're doing is pretty mind-blowing too. Their payments network, RippleNet, is already moving over $15 billion across borders every single month. This proves their core tech isn't just a cool idea. It's actually being used for some serious stuff in global finance. And we're not just seeing it at the business level, we're seeing growth right down on the blockchain itself. You can see here, daily transactions on the XRP Ledger jumped by 9% in just a single quarter. That's real, steady growth, showing the underlying tech is being used more and more. So what's the secret sauce here? What's driving all this growth? Well, a huge piece of the puzzle is their strategy of forging these really deep partnerships with major financial players, especially over in Asia. A perfect example is this thing they're doing in Japan called JFIP. Basically, it's a program run by Ripple that's pouring money into startups that are building financial tools on the XRP Ledger. And the key word here is compliant. They're focusing on stuff that institutions can actually use, which is the total opposite of just riding market hype. And we're not talking about small-time startups here. These are heavy hitters like Mizuho Bank and SMBC Nikko Securities. By teaming up with these established giants, Ripple is showing they are serious about building a bridge between old-school finance and the new world of Web3. Okay, so we've covered the IPO hype and we've looked at the real-world business. Now, let's get a little wild. Let's dive into one of the boldest, most out-there theories you'll find in the crypto world. It's the perfect example of just how intense the speculation can get. I bet you've seen this one floating around online. The idea that a single XRP token could somehow, someday, be worth almost $900. That's an insane number, right? But where on earth does a figure like that even come from? Well, the math behind it is actually
Surprisingly simple. Proponents take the gigantic U.S. national debt, then they look at Ripple's escrow, which is basically this giant stash of billions of XRP that the company has locked up, and they do a little division. They calculate what the price of each XRP would need to be to pay off a huge chunk of that debt. And voila, you land at around $883 a pop.
Now, for anyone holding XRP, that's an electrifying idea, right? But, and it's a big but, there's a huge gap between that back of the napkin math and how the real world actually works. This whole idea runs into some pretty massive roadblocks. For starters, when you hear US policymakers talk about a digital reserve, what's the one name they mention? Bitcoin, not XRP. Second, that escrow is a private asset. The government can't just come in and take it. And let's be real, if you tried to sell that much XRP, you probably crash the price to zero, not send it to the moon. It's just not that simple. All right, so we've been on a bit of a journey here, haven't we? We've looked at the IPO rumors, the actual business on the ground, and some of the wildest speculation out there. So what does it all mean when you put it together? This slide really lays it out perfectly. You've got these two very different paths forward for Ripple. There's the speculative future, where everyone's waiting for one big explosive event like an IPO to make it valuable. Then there's the strategic future, which is all about the slow, steady grind of building a real business with real utility, one partnership at a time. And that, right there, brings us to the final, most important question. While all the crazy price predictions and IPO rumors are grabbing the headlines, the real story might be happening quietly, behind the scenes. So forget the IPO for a second. The real question is this: is Ripple, right now, actually building the future of finance? And honestly, the answer to that question is what will really define their future.